The golden banners of the kingdom of Dareth fluttered like fire in the wind, bearing the sigil of King Malrik the Resolute. His name echoed across lands, not for kindness or wisdom, but for conquest, dominion, and iron-fisted rule. Malrik ruled with a sharp mind and a sharper sword. He had united 12 warring tribes, crushed rebellions, and built cities of marble and gold. His advisors called him a visionary, his enemies called him a tyrant, and Malrik, he called himself the Hand of Destiny. But destiny, as he was about to learn, had plans of its own. It began with a dream, one that came to him on the eve of his 50th year. In it, he stood atop his great obsidian throne, watching his kingdom burn, not from war or fire, but from silence, empty streets, hollow eyes, starving mouths. He reached out to command, to rally, to save, but his voice was dust, and no one listened. When he awoke, his chambers were cold, despite the roaring hearth. A strange fear twisted in his gut, unfamiliar and unwelcome. Dismissing it as a shadow of age, he rose and went about his day, hosting emissaries, sentencing thieves, and inspecting his armies. But the dream returned the next night, and the next. By the 4th night, Malrik summoned his royal seer. "The gods whisper through dreams," the seer muttered, eyes white with cataract and smoke. "They strip illusions from kings. What you rule is not what you own, my king. What you give, that is what becomes eternal." Malrik laughed, though uneasily. "I give law, order, civilization." The seer shook his head slowly. "And yet, your people die in silence. Visit them as a man, not a monarch." Malrik, prideful as ever, would have dismissed the idea, but something in the old man's tone gnawed at him. He could not sleep anyway. That night, he donned a plain cloak, left through the servants' gate, and walked into the city, unguarded. What he saw would change him forever. The capital of Dareth, Galthor, had long been praised for its shining spires and sprawling marketplaces. But beneath that gilded layer lay another city, one of shadows and scraps. Children huddled in alleys, mothers bartered rags for bread, and wounded veterans, his soldiers, begged beside statues built in his honor. No one recognized him. He passed like a ghost, invisible, a relic of a world they no longer believed in. He returned each night, not out of duty, but from something deeper, a whisper that told him this was the truth he had never seen. On the 7th night, he came upon a young girl named Elira, no older than 10, trying to carry her unconscious brother from the cold. Malrik helped her. She didn't thank him, only stared with exhausted eyes. He offered her gold. She looked at it, then said bitterly, "We can't eat coins." That struck him deeper than any sword ever had. The next morning, King Malrik did the unthinkable. He summoned his council and announced a new decree. The treasury of Dareth would fund granaries, orphanages, and free clinics across the land. Nobles objected. Generals warned of unrest. The High Lord of Coin nearly fainted, but Malrik silenced them all with a single command: "I have ruled with strength. Now I will rule with heart, and if that offends you, leave your titles at the door." Some did. Most stayed. Out of fear, yes, but also curiosity. What was this new fire burning in their king? The transformation began swiftly. Food caravans rolled into the outer districts. Soldiers were paid to protect villagers, not just borders. And artisans were hired not to build statues, but homes. Whispers spread. "The Iron King has turned soft," some scoffed, but others said, "The king has remembered us." 1 year later, something strange happened. A neighboring kingdom, Velmire, once bitter enemies of Dareth, approached Malrik with an offer not of war, but alliance. Their emissary explained, "We watched what you did. Your people follow you not from fear, but from faith. Such power cannot be conquered. We wish to learn, not fight. Malrik, once the warlord who believed only in steel, wept in private that night, not from weakness, but from the weight of knowing he had finally earned something greater than victory. But peace, like dreams, can be fragile. A rogue faction from within his own court, those who had profited from the old ways, plotted against him. They stirred whispers of rebellion, claimed the king had grown mad with generosity, that he had traded power for pity. One night, an assassin entered Malrik's chamber. The blade did not reach him. Alira, now a palace helper under the king's personal patronage, saw the shadow and raised the alarm. Guards swarmed. The assassin fell. When Malrik asked her why she saved him, her reply was simple: "Because you fed my brother. Because you saw us." He understood then. He had once ruled from fear, and people had obeyed. Now, he ruled from compassion, and people chose to stand by him. Years passed. Dareth prospered not from conquest, but from community. Trade boomed. Neighboring nations sent scholars to study its welfare system. Temples were built, not for gods of war, but for gods of mercy. On his deathbed, surrounded not by gold, but by children he'd once saved and farmers who bore his seal proudly, Malrik whispered to his grandson, "Strength builds empires. Kindness builds kingdoms that last." And so it was written in the Book of Kings. He who ruled with sword carved borders. He who ruled with charity carved eternity. The charity of kings lives on, not in marble, not in crowns, but in every soul who chooses to lead not by command, but by care.